Texas has made the biggest play of the post-election legal battles yet. This week, we've seen an astonishing legal challenge from the Lone Star State as they have taken 4 states to court. Those states are Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, and Wisconsin. What's the goal? It's to ensure that the Electoral College does not count the electors of those states as a result of their unconstitutional actions in implementing mail-in voting. That's a bit of a mouthful for you. But this case has seriously begun to snowball. It's super important. 18 states and 106 House members have now joined Texas in the case against those 4 states. And the case looks like it could go to the Supreme Court. So in today's video, we're going to be explaining the ins and outs of this legal case to you in pure and simple English, so you know exactly what's going on, as well as outlining the potential path to victory for President Trump. You're watching Political, and if you're new here, please do remember to subscribe. If you found the video useful, drop us a like and do leave a comment. So for no further ado, let's get straight into that legal case, Ian.
Yeah, so I want to bring you this statement from Ken Paxton, who is the Attorney General of Texas, and he is the original attorney who brought this case forward. As he said, it started off with just Texas, and now there's, 17 states, I think, that have joined in on board. So here's the statement that he put out on his website. I'll put the link in the description if you want to see some of the other material. And it kind of summarizes the situation quite well. So, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton today filed a lawsuit against Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin in the United States Supreme Court. The 4 states exploited the COVID-19 pandemic to justify ignoring federal and state election laws and unlawfully enacting last-minute changes, thus skewing the results of the 2020 general election. The battleground states flooded their people with unlawful ballot applications and ballots while ignoring statutory requirements as to how they were received, evaluated, and counted. Trust in the integrity of our election processes is sacrosanct and binds our citizenry and the states in this union together. Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin destroyed that trust and compromised the security and integrity of the 2020 election. The states violated statutes enacted by their duly elected legislatures, thereby violating the Constitution. By ignoring both state and federal law, these states have not only tainted the integrity of their own citizens' vote, but of Texas and every other state that held lawful elections, said Attorney General Paxton. Their failure to abide by the rule of law casts a dark shadow of doubt over the outcome of the entire election. We must now ask the Supreme Court to step in to correct this egregious error. Elections for federal office must comport with federal constitutional standards. For presidential elections, each state must appoint its electors to the Electoral College in a manner that complies with the Constitution. The Electors Clause requirement that only state legislatures may set the rules governing the appointment of electors and elections and cannot be delegated to local officials. The majority of the rush decisions made by local officials were not approved by the state legislatures, thereby circumventing the Constitution. So Trump called this the big one, and I think filed to become a party or whatever in the lawsuit. What do you make of the whole situation? Do you see it as the big one?
I mean, it is the big one, isn't it? I mean, Texas is, in plain English, Texas is asking potentially the Supreme Court, who will have jurisdiction for legal cases between states, to effectively annul the Electoral College standing of those 4 states as a result of the malpractice there. And yeah, of course, because what those states have done is they knew it was unconstitutional. They knew it would facilitate fraud. They knew that the mail-in voting was unsustainable. Cast your mind back to the fuss that was created just before the election. It seems like a long time ago now, but it's still very clear in my mind. It's, as it says in the brief, it is impossible to know which candidate garnered the majority of lawful votes in those 4 states, as I see it. And I think the court will see it that way too. And, you have to remember with this sort of thing, most of the mainstream media and most of the lawyers you will see in the mainstream media, they're activists, okay? They were very pro-Biden and they wanted Biden to win. So you have to bear that in mind as well. The Supreme Court is not an activist court. The Supreme Court is there to defend the Constitution above all. And so when Texas is arguing from the merits of the constitutional point, I think it has a very good case, and no matter what, all these, pro-Democrat lawyers, listen, I like him, but Legal Eagle is probably one of them. Everyone's going to watch his video. So we have to remember that. So I do think this is a big one. What about you?
Yeah, I think for anyone, I think like I've read a lot into this, and I'm trying to kind of understand the actual legal battle that's happening, and that's why we wanted to do this video, to really explain, or at least give a bit of a sort of summary from. We're not experts in legal matters, to be sure, but I think we're maybe good at explaining it in layman's terms. Essentially, whereas we looked at these other cases, these other lawsuits, they would go through, the appellate courts and the high courts and all this, and they would get to the Supreme Court eventually upon a bunch of appeals. What they're doing with this is that one of the original reasons for existence of the Supreme Court was to settle state v. state matters. And so because of that, what Texas are effectively doing here are sending this straight to the Supreme Court by doing that. And they're saying what we want is you to throw out the electors in these states. So it's going to be a case of the Supreme Court, if they take it up, may rule in favor or not rule in favor. So if they win this case, this effectively means those electors are thrown out. No one would have a majority. It would go to the state legislatures at that point, of which the Republicans control something like 27 of them, I think. So, if they voted partisan fashion, then they would vote Trump in, you would imagine. So, but what the case is effectively doing is saying that under the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, everyone should have equal protection under the law, and by these states not applying that law and how their elections are run to the ballots and to the votes, what they've effectively done is not given equal protection then to Texas citizens or citizens in other states that did follow their own law in their elections, and thereby they're diluting the votes of the people in those states. So that's the sort of angle that they're approaching it. Whether or not the Supreme Court even takes it up, whether or not they rule in favor, no one actually really knows, obviously. And like you say, you'll hear people from Democrats say, "Oh no, this is ludicrous," and then Republican attorneys and lawyers say, "Oh no, this is fair game."
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to bear in mind, don't you, that a scuffed election for one means a scuffed election for everybody. And what's happened is in these 4 states, as you very clearly said, there have been problems. There's been a malpractice which threatens to cast doubt on the entire electoral system. So, of course, Texas citizens are going to be impacted by those 4 states, so they're going to the Supreme Court to try and get all of that renewed. And you clearly as well, you set out the path to victory for Donald Trump, because in the event of everything, this would be a tie, therefore it go to the state legislatures and everything. So, I mean, can I ask you, do you think Donald Trump is likely to win from this? Do you think we can see President Trump in January? Like, what do you think?
I really, not only do I think this is an incredibly complex issue that is like really, really difficult to rule on, just from like the legal perspective, because it really does come down to interpretation a lot. It's difficult for me to remove my bias from the situation. So I don't actually know, and I don't even know if the Supreme Court will even take it up, because I just think there is going to be this general sense. Can you imagine a scenario where the Democrats have all but, declared victory and they've had parades and all of this, that then the Supreme Court makes a ruling that eventually leads to a Trump presidency? I'm not sure that. I think it was. Well, I can't remember who that was actually, but one of the recent justices who died from the Supreme Court said, a good judge, if you always feel good about the decisions you make, then you're not a good justice, right? And I imagine a lot of these justices, if they made this decision and ruled in favor of Trump, wouldn't feel good about it, in the sense that they knew that it's going to cause all sorts of mayhem and, civil tensions and whatever, and all of this between obviously the Republicans and the Democrats. So I don't know even if they did feel as though they had a sound legal case here. I'm not sure that they would have the courage of their convictions to actually rule in their favor. In all honesty, I just want to say, I really like this line, though. The 4 states exploited the COVID-19 pandemic to justify ignoring federal and state election laws. That's what it felt like running up to the election, that they were taking advantage of this, and the Secretary of States in these states were taking advantage of the situation to kind of act in a partisan way to give their candidate an advantage. And it doesn't feel right that they should get away with that and call it what you want, steal the election or whatever. You saw in places like, was it Wisconsin, where they had that indefinitely confined thing where they had like thousands and thousands of people, and you had like in Pennsylvania, the Secretary of State there saying, oh, Biden's going to win like before the election and things like this. It just, their actions, I think, were really, really totally unreasonable. And I think whatever happens, I think people are going to feel really, really like this election was not a proper election.
No, absolutely. And you have to remember, it's those 4 states where the 90% of the problems came from when you're thinking of the post-election kind of media coverage and this, that, and the other. But if I just kind of dial back to what you were saying before, and you don't think that the Supreme Court justices will have the courage to go through with that, I mean, I'm tempted to agree with you. We'll have to see. I hope they do have the courage, because I do think it's a sound legal argument. Okay. And there's quite a few people saying that the Texas case has a lot of merit. But you were saying that the Democrats have already held the victory parades basically already. Well, that's on the Democrats, isn't it? I don't think, so in an ideal world, lawyers and judges wouldn't, allow one party to unilaterally declare themselves a winner, no matter how many big tech firms get behind them and no matter how much the mainstream media gets behind them. They wouldn't allow them to just declare victory for themselves and then from that have their court decisions influenced by that. But we're living in 2020, and it's almost as if the left has held the nation hostage, isn't it? It's almost like they have a knife to the throat of America, and they're saying, no, declare Biden president now. Otherwise, you know what's going to happen, and you're going to see Black Lives Matter on steroids.
Yeah, certainly. I just want to add, I don't know. I don't know. For me, when it comes to the whole situation, if you can really provide all that evidence for the fraud, and I was totally behind this and totally behind the idea of, show that evidence and present it, and then let's have a look at it. And they pretty much just haven't even really looked at it. And it's quite difficult to, without further investigations between now and the future, to really determine to what extent there was obviously some fraud. There are certainly some fraudulent ballots. I don't know how many. It's hard to put a number on it. We've seen loads of stuff. But when it comes to this is very much like a legal case. I don't know what the correct decision is. I know what feels right. It feels right that in these states, what they did was not right. In an ideal world, we could just rerun the election, couldn't we, with what we know? But obviously that's not the case. So, I don't know. I think anyway, I'm just eagerly anticipating to see what happens, and I want to hear the arguments that are made. And if the SCOTUS takes it up, which I hope they do, I want to see their opinion on it so that we can kind of hopefully have a better understanding of everything that's going on.
Yeah, definitely. And we are all awaiting those decisions with bated breath. But I think that kind of it's a nice note to end on, isn't it?
Yeah.
So thanks so much for watching, guys. Please do subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps us out because it helps our videos get ahead in the algorithm so more people like you can watch this video. Please do leave a like and a comment. Tell us what you thought of the video and the case. And please do share the video if you know anyone who might particularly enjoy it or benefit from it. Thanks very much, guys, and we'll see you next time.